decided that we're either going to support someone who's a democratic socialist or somebody who has a long history of being a Republican.
9 people shot dead
Michael Bloomberg
by a white supremacist.
A couple of weeks
Bernie
ago
voted
said
5 times against the Brady bill.
Right.
I'm not saying he's responsible for the 9 deaths, but that man would not have been able to get that weapon with the waiting period had been what I suggest until you are clear.
The mayor even said that they disproportionately stopped white people too often and minorities too little. There's 7 white people on this stage talking about racial justice.
At least I didn't have a boss
Bernie Sanders
who
is
said
not
to
a
me,
socialist.
kill
I mean,
it.
if you look it up in the
way
dictionary,
that Mayor
he's not
Bloomberg
calling for
have said to one of his pregnant employees.
Nobody accused me of doing anything other than just making a comment or two. And what the senator did suggest was that we release these women from the non-disclosure.
Andrew, but not on that question tonight. On that question tonight, he looked unmoored. And while it shouldn't necessarily be the most important question, they will make it the most important question until he makes it a less important question by straightening the whole thing out. The flip side of that is he's also a guy who deeply believes in things. He speaks aspirationally. His clothes tonight reflected that when he talked about what he thinks America should be and the goals we should set ourselves to that speak to the lives of everyday people. And anyone who underestimates the power of that is missing something.
Let's be clear, though. I mean, he comes into this debate as the front runner in the race. And the question of what this debate did to this race, I think it's pretty clear. To your point, that the fact that Warren decided to attack him does signal something about her recognizing that her pathway, if she has one, has to run through his lane and that she has to try and take some of those votes away. But I don't know that this debate did much to knock him off of that front runner status.
Because he's so far down the track at this point in terms of collecting delegates, in terms of looking strong for Super Tuesday, looking strong a bit in South Carolina, too. I do think, Biden came in strong with South Carolina. He's going to connect with voters. He'll probably get this Clyburn endorsement as well. He said in his closing statement that he wanted to nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. That's certainly going to resonate with those black women in South Carolina who are going to make up the majority of black voters. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people will look at this, these last many months, they've been sort of looking past Sanders. He did have a heart attack. Was that going to weaken him? It didn't. It seemed to make him stronger, in fact. And so I think for somebody like Warren, it's probably too late to kind of cut into his momentum.
To a point, Abdul, I just want to play some of the sound of Warren trying to draw differences, as they say, with Senator Sanders.
Bernie and I agree on a lot of things, but I think I would make a better president than Bernie. And the reason for that is that getting a progressive agenda enacted is going to be really hard, and it's going to take someone who digs into the details to make it happen. Bernie and I both wanted to help rein in Wall Street. In 2008, we both got our chance, but I dug in, I fought the big banks, I built the coalitions, and I won. Bernie and I both want to see universal health care, but Bernie's plan doesn't explain how to get there, doesn't show how we're going to get enough allies into it, and doesn't show enough about how we're going to pay for it. I dug in, I did the work, and then Bernie's team trashed me for it.
Well, look, I think there's a number of dynamics in that. I mean, that was a brilliant point. I think it landed. I think probably for every woman in the world, their heads were nodding. Like, Bernie talks and I do. The guys, yell, I get it done. And so I think that she really struck something really powerful there. She never followed up.
Never.
Then she spent the rest of the debate beating up on Bloomberg, trying to do the same thing she did last week. And I don't know if that helped her very much. But I do think that one thing happened. There was a lot of guys just screaming over each other over and over and over again.
I want to explain that dynamic. This was the last time we're going to see 2 or 3 of these candidates. And they were surrounded by their teams saying, all right, this is going to be your last debate unless you do something incredibly stratospheric that lights the political world afire. And those were essentially the incentives for everyone on the stage, which is, look, this is your last debate. Go out swinging.
See, I thought it was just proving that men were too emotional to be the president. No, I thought Warren was great tonight. For those who were looking for her to repeat her performance last time, which clearly, given the difference between early voting in Nevada and day of voting in Nevada, you could see that her vote share was increasing post-debate. She raked in a ton of money. You know, I think she delivered for people who were looking for that. So if there was someone who was leaning her way and waited to see what she could do tonight, I think they got a really good performance out of there. She was wonky. Right. She was her happy warrior self. She didn't scream. I thought it came across as presidential in a debate that was a little bit less.
You know, the person we haven't mentioned is Buttigieg.
Yeah.
And I thought there were times for me when he seemed to be kind of a truth teller there, saying, look at what we're looking at. The American public is worried about a Trump-Sanders contest because he said they want to turn on the TV and have their blood pressure go down and not up. And then he said, I'm sure he thought of it just right at that point. And then he said that Trump was stuck in the 50s and Bernie was stuck in the 60s. That's a pretty good line, too.
Yeah.
And so I don't think Buttigieg got anything out of this debate because it was a shout fest. But I do think that he kept his calm and his self-respect.
Let's play the 50s and 60s line here.
Looking forward to a scenario where it comes down to Donald Trump with his nostalgia for the social order of the 1950s and Bernie Sanders with the nostalgia for the revolutionary politics of the 1960s. This is not about what coups were happening in the 1970s or 80s. This is about the future. This is about 2020. We are not going to survive or succeed, and we're certainly not going to win by reliving the Cold War. And we're not going to win these critical House and Senate races if people in those races have to explain why the nominee of the Democrat is telling people to look at the bright side of the Castro regime. We've got to be a lot smarter about this and look to the future.
Sanders. Okay. Senator Sanders, your response.
Let us be clear. Do we think health care for all, Pete, is some kind of radical communist idea? Do we think raising the minimum wage to a living wage? Do we think building the millions of units of affordable housing that we need? Do we think raising taxes on billionaires is a radical idea?
Let's talk about what's radical about that plan.
Reform is a radical idea.
The things you just named.
Do we think immigration reform? The truth is, Pete, that the American people support my agenda. That is why I am beating Trump in virtually every poll that has done, and why I will defeat him.
Let's all talk over each other.
But one of the things that was interesting about what Buttigieg earlier had actually said, you know, we're facing this situation, meaning the country's facing this situation where, you know, for the next year, you're going to have to listen to, President Trump and Bernie Sanders going after each other and the kind of the war of that, which does sort of set up what the dynamic very well may be.
Yeah.
But it also raises the question, is Sanders the only one who actually can go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump? I mean, to your point, debating him is like, climbing a mountain, or for whatever the analogy was.
Walking into one?
Nobody, I mean, if people are upset at, me or anybody else for raising a socialism issue with Sanders in an interview, I mean, when he's on a stage with Trump, it's going to be one cheap shot after another.
Well,
and is he the only one who actually can?
And I think there are people who are excited about Bernie and who are happy that he's finally in the center of that stage. Is that there is that belief that not only is he tough enough to go head-to-head with Trump and not be thrown off, but also that he is leading a real movement.
Well, you go to his. I mean, if you go to all their rallies, I mean, his rallies are.
And that is very hard to do. Everybody wants to lead a movement. Everybody thinks they're, you got your Twitter followers or whatever. Everybody thinks that you're leading a movement. It's very, very hard to do and part of the reason that Sam's been able to pull it off is the consistency that we get mad at him about has allowed him to build a movement.
I want to go to Aaron Burnett and Dana Bash. She's with they're with Senator Amy Klobuchar. Hey, guys.
All right, and we are here with the senator who just obviously came. And how'd you feel about that free fall?
Well, it was another slugfest, and I don't think that necessarily serves the people who are watching, but I will say that I tried my best, with the exception of wanting to make the really clear case that we have a choice here and voters have a choice on Super Tuesday between putting a socialist in charge of the ticket or putting someone like me that can bring people with her and win back the Senate and keep the House. And that was my case. And I tried to stay out of some of the fray, honestly, and instead chose to talk about what we really need to do about the coronavirus, rural health care, education, and the like.
You did, last week, obviously, you and Pete Buttigieg had that, rather spears out run-in. But that was not what you opted for tonight. And a lot of other people on the stage did. Really, you mentioned socialism and Bernie Sanders. That was pretty much it. That was a strategy then, not to get involved in some of the
because as I said,
matches?
if we're going to spend the next 4 months tearing our party apart, then we're going to be able to watch Donald Trump spend the next 4 years tearing our country apart. So I think it is really important for the people out there to see something else in a presidential candidate, that you're not just looking for sound bites on TV the next day. And I'm really aware that some of those exchanges with, say, Elizabeth and Bloomberg, that's what's going to show up on TV in the morning instead of my answer on rural health care. What do you think matters more to the people of this country? The health care answer.
What matters here in South Carolina, when you look at the demographics, as you well know, is 60% of the Democratic electorate is expected to be African American. And in the beginning of this race, and obviously the first two contests, there weren't very many African Americans in those electorates. There were some in Nevada, and you didn't get them, just to be blunt. So what's your strategy to turn that around here?
Well, I have to earn that support, and I'm well aware that the Vice President has a long history of support in the African American community. In my own state, I have significant support. I've done very well in every election and also have the support of leaders in the African American community in this presidential race. So I just need to take that out on the road to make it very clear my policies. And one of the things that I can stress, in addition to economic opportunity, criminal justice reform, is in fact that I am the leader on getting rid of voting purchase, on getting rid of gerrymandering, on automatically registering every kid to vote in this country when they turn 18. Voting matters big time to the African American community.
So not surprisingly, you said you weren't in the fray, but there were some substantive debate discussions about a lot of issues, in particular health care. And you got into it with Bernie Sanders on that issue. I want you and our viewers to listen to.
Very good.
Our plan, we have laid out options all over the place. One of the options is a 7.5% payroll tax on employers, which will save them substantial sums of money.
Hey, Bernie, let me respond to this.
Does the math add up?
No, the math does not add up. In fact, just on 60 Minutes this weekend, he said he wasn't going to rattle through the nickels and the dimes. Well, let me tell you how many nickels and dimes we're talking about. Nearly $60 trillion. Do you know how much that is for all of his programs? That is 3 times the American economy, not the federal government, the entire American economy. The Medicare for All plan alone, page 8, clearly says that it'll kick 149 million Americans off their current health insurance in 4 years. That is true.
Do you feel like you got an answer from Senator Sanders?
No, and he's repeatedly not said how he's going to pay for things. One of the best things we've got going here in terms of a fiscal argument with the President of the United States is the fact that he doesn't care about how he pays for anything. He's treating the people of America like they're poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And so for Senator Sanders then, imagine what Donald Trump's going to be able to do to him on the debate stage to prosecute the case. You're going to kick people off their health insurance. You aren't going to say how you're going to pay for things. Contrast that with me. Show every nickel and dime how I'm going to pay for things. I actually have a deficit pay down program. I think that's going to make a big difference and allow me to be much more aggressive about arguing the facts with Donald Trump.
last week you were talking about Mayor Bloomberg, and you were surprised. You said that he had performed as badly as he did. Did you think he did better? Were you surprised by how he did tonight or not?
I think that, first of all, I wanted him on that debate stage because I knew there would be a lot of questions raised. And it's really bothered me how he's able to just buy his way on the airwave. And by the way, every time people see a Michael Bloomberg ad, they should give to me at amyklobuchar.com. To me, that would create some fairness so I can run those same ads. And I think that this time he seemed prepared, more prepared to answer these questions. But there's still huge problems here in terms of his lack of support for Democrats and some of the issues, of course, relating to things he said. He said that it was misguided to increase the minimum wage. He said that in 2014. It didn't come out in the debate today, but that just gives you an example of some of the things he said.
What about what he got into with Senator Warren, again, about the NDAs and the questions about the statements that he made or didn't make?
Exactly.
During many years ago when he was when in the workplace, the women in the workplace were not happy with his conduct.
Well, I think, first of all, he's released a few of the women from the NDAs, but I think what she's saying, she wants to get all the evidence, and she's right. You're running for president. It all has to come out. But I think what was missing, what I wanted to say in that discussion was, what about, we always focus on the rich and the famous. That's fine. But when it comes to sexual harassment, we should be talking about the housekeeper in the hotel and the nurse in the hospital or the factory worker on the front line that's getting pinched while she's doing her job. Those are the things we should be focused on.
All right, Senator Klobuchar, we appreciate your time.
Okay.
All right, back to you, Anderson.
Thank you.
Erin, Dana, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly with more from the candidates and our political pros. We'll be right back.
We made USAA insurance for busy veterans like Kate. So when her car got hit, she didn't waste any time. She filed the claim on her USAA app and said, that was easy. USAA, what you're made of, we're made for.
Welcome back to our special coverage debate night here in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm here with Aaron Burnett and with Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who was just on the debate stage. And Mr. Mayor, let me just ask you generally, how did it feel up there? Because watching it, it was just crackling, a little bit chaotic at times. You got yourself in there, but did it feel uncomfortable, or were you?
No, it was a little scrappy, but I had the opportunity to get my message out, and I think what Americans saw was two different visions. One is Senator Sanders' vision, that we have to go all the way to one side, that you've got to be agreeing with him or you must be for the status quo. Mine is different, a way to hold to our progressive values and pull more Americans with us. I just don't think that we stand a chance of defeating President Trump if we're dividing people further. And in a place like South Carolina, for example, right here in Charleston, where Joe Cunningham almost miraculously flipped a seat and was able to turn that into a Democratic seat. And across the country, we got Democratic House members like that. We have got to make sure that we help them and have a top of the ticket who will help rather than hurt.
Let me play for our viewers one of the moments where you made a similar argument in the debate.
I'll tell you exactly what it adds up to. It adds up to 4 more years of Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, and the inability to get the Senate into Democratic hands. The time has come for us to stop acting like the presidency is the only office that matters. Not only is this a way to get Donald Trump reelected, we got a House to worry about. We got a Senate to worry about.
You're really the only one on that debate stage making the argument, not just for yourself, for president, but for Democrats down ballot, and particularly the Democrats keeping the House.
Well, I'm a mayor. I know how important these decisions that get made at the state level are. And as a president, none of the things we're saying we're going to do will come to anything, even if we do win the White House, if we lose the House and if we lose ground in the Senate. It's why it's so critically important. You know, one of the questions I get the most often from voters is, how are you going to get any of this done if Mitch McConnell is empowered to block you? And so we have a responsibility. I don't want our nominee to be stuck, to have House Democrats stuck explaining why we nominated Bernie Sanders when we could have nominated a Democrat.
So you made the point very clearly. You said Bernie can't win. You really believe that?
Look, if he got nominated, I would do everything in my power to help, but I think it is a terrible risk to take in an election that we absolutely dare not lose.
All right, so he came after you at one point, and I think if I have it right, I wrote down, he said you are running to billionaires for funding, to which you responded that you had, what was it, 2,000
Yeah, more than
right
2,000 grassroots donors from right here in Charleston.
Were
so
you surprised when he came after you?
I was not surprised, but I did appreciate the chance to clear it up because, he's got people thinking that's where most of our funding comes from, and it's just not true. What he was talking about is less than a fraction of 1%. We raise the bulk of our campaign contributions from grassroots supporters. Folks, yes, I'm going to say it. If you're watching and you support my campaign, I need you to go to PeteForAmerica.com and chip in a few bucks because that is the lifeblood of our campaign, especially as we prepare for Super Tuesday. And what I really want to be talking about is a plan to win. My plan to win is not to define a campaign by whose help we reject, but to define our campaign by how we can draw people together, to call people in, not call them names online, to reach out to fellow diehard Democrats, independents, and even some of those crossover Republicans who are willing to consider voting for a Democrat, but not just any Democrat.
On that note, I want to ask you the same question I just asked Senator Klobuchar, which is about where we are right now, South Carolina. About 60% of the electorate is likely to be African American. You have not done well so far with African Americans. How are you going to turn that around here? And then, if continuing on more broadly in other states where it matters. I mean, it's historically very important for Democrats to get that vote to be the nominee.
Well, tonight was a great opportunity to get my message out to black voters who I think have often felt taken for granted by politics as usual, to talk about the Frederick Douglass plan, my comprehensive vision that was shaped by black voices, not me sitting in a room, about how we can deliver economic empowerment, how we can deliver real criminal justice reform, voting rights, and all of the other things that need attention. Many of the candidates who are performing best with black voters, one of two things is true. Either they've been around for decades to get known, or they have billions of dollars to spend to get known. Obviously, neither one of those things is true for me. But I'm out there asking for a vote that I know is hard-won, that I will never take for granted, and also will never miss an opportunity to seek to earn. And I think that's how we're going to continue to gather that support as we go.
So, we've seen, obviously, we'll see what happens on Saturday. Joe Biden was very clear. His answer to the question of what happens to you if you don't win, he is going to win. But we have seen a shift in the polls, and primarily that's been Bernie Sanders rising. But have you felt any shift on the ground?
Well, what we're seeing is more people taking an interest. You got to remember that many voters are busy and they've got a lot going on, and they don't follow the blow-by-blow of the nominating race for a whole year. In the days leading up to the vote, which are the days that we're in right now when it comes to South Carolina, many voters really sit down and look through their options in a new way, and that's why these days ahead are so critical for our campaign.
So let's just talk strategy and raw numbers here. You've made very clear tonight over and over again that you don't think Senator Sanders, well, obviously you don't think you're the best person to be the nominee, but in particular Senator Sanders, who's a front runner now, would hurt the party. But part of the issue is that moderates like you are splintering the non-Sanders vote. Do you see any change in that? Do you see any consolidation? And I guess to answer that question, you would have to say who's willing to go first and to say I'm out in order to help consolidate.
Well, you're right. Two things you just pointed out. One, Senator Sanders is in the lead. And two, most Democrats want somebody besides Senator Sanders. Now, I've gotten the most votes so far of anyone besides Senator Sanders. I've gotten the most delegates of anyone besides Senator Sanders, and I'm the only one to come in ahead of him anywhere in the Iowa contest, going by the delegate count. And so if you're looking for an alternative to coalesce around, I believe ours is the strongest. That's been demonstrated in the voting up until now, and we'll work to keep earning that place to be the alternative. And that's what I think folks saw tonight. Two very different theories about how to bring real change to this country. One that's about going to the extreme and just beating down anybody who disagrees with you, and the other that is about how we can do these things that the American people want, from higher wages to health care for everybody, and uniting the American people to get it done.
So there was a line you had. Look, everyone, your rivals, they come on here, they talk about your gift with words, okay? You had a line where you talked about the 50s, going back to the 50s with Donald Trump and the 60s with Bernie Sanders. Did you, out of just pure curiosity, did you plan that one, or was that just on the fly?
Well, it's just been on my mind. You know, to me, this election is about the future. It's 2020. We're facing unprecedented challenges, from cyber threats to election intervention from Russia to things like the coronavirus. And I see this pattern where we keep getting sucked. I mean, we're talking about, Fidel Castro. And we're talking about early Fidel Castro. This is a kind of time warp that is, I think, the exact wrong answer for a moment when voters want to know what we're going to do to secure the future.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. We appreciate your time. Thank you. And more candidates going to be with us when we come back. Dan and I are here in South Carolina. We'll be right back, and Anderson and his team as well.
Fabletics has everything you need for this fitness season. Our best-selling leggings and bras come in a variety of styles, standout colors, and sizes up to 4X. We have something for every body. Set your look apart with details that flatter every curve and pockets that are convenient and cute. With a wide range of and fits, you can do anything. Do yoga, do the gym, do you in Fabletics. Get your first 2 pairs of leggings for just $24 when you become a VIP member. Now available in-store or online at Fabletics.com.
Nerds! Hey, Dad, can I ask you a question?
Sure, sweetie. What?
Should I consolidate my debt onto a single credit card to pay it down faster? Or is that even something I can do with my credit score?
Here's some advice my father gave me. The wealthiest camel has the biggest hump.
Okay.
Not everyone has the credit card answers you're looking for. The experts at NerdWallet compare hundreds of credit cards so you can shop the right card for you. From low rates to no annual fees, for all your credit card questions, turn to the nerds.
I've been having stomach troubles. It's either yogurt, pork, or citrus. Or almonds. Or maybe it's cinnamon. Now, I could start by removing a lot of things from my diet and adding them back in one at a time until I find the culprit. Or I could find out what might actually be bothering me before removing and adding foods back in again. I'm gonna do that.
Don't let what happened to me happen to you. Don't let your wives and girlfriends find out about JustFab.com. Look, boots. They started at just $10. It sounds so innocent, right? Wrong! Now they're everywhere!
I'm just gonna leave these right here.
Okay.
Lights on or off?
Off would be preferable.
She's at it again!
JustFab delivers thousands of styles starting at $39.95 plus free shipping. Get your first pair for just $10 when you become a VIP member, only at JustFab.com.
My prescriptions used to be really expensive, but then I went to GoodRx.com.
You put in the drug you're looking for, and bang, you've got half a dozen or more choices in front of you of pricing and locations to get it.
I have good insurance, but with GoodRx, I save even more money.
Go to GoodRx.com and check it out.
I see what's possible instead of what's here. Others see cracked concrete, run-down courts. I see a way to bring pride back to communities. That's why I made Project Backboard and a site with GoDaddy. How will you make your mark? Make the world you want.
Trying to nourish your skin? Leave it to Tula. Skincare formulated with probiotics and superfoods like blueberries, watermelon, and chia seeds. Ingredients that nourish and balance. Tula skincare routines take the guesswork out of finding your most radiant skin. Products so clean and effective, you'll immediately see and feel the difference. So feed your skin the good stuff. 20% off at Tula.com with code T.
Democratic debate number 10 on the books, the last one before South Carolinians vote, the last debate before Super Tuesday. We'll bring in the team shortly, but first I want to go back to Aaron Burnett and Dan Bash with Senator Bernie Sanders. Aaron?
All right, and we are here with Senator Sanders, as I said, so that's how it feels, right? To be in the Senate, to be the front runner. How did it feel?
Well, I guess when you win the popular vote in Iowa and you win the New Hampshire primary and you win the Nevada caucus, this is what happens. Your name gets mentioned a whole lot. You get attacked a whole lot, but that's fine. We're feeling great, and I think we have the real momentum to win here in South Carolina and pull off a major upset and do very well on Super Tuesday.
So let me ask you about some of these attacks. It started right off the bat.
Yes.
Okay, Vladimir Putin came up, and it started. Let me just play one of the first exchanges here, Senator.
I think that Donald Trump thinks it would be better if he's president. I do not think so. Vladimir Putin thinks that Donald Trump should be president of the United States, and that's why Russia is helping you get elected, so
Mr.
you'll lose to him.
Let me tell Mr. Putin, okay, I'm not a good friend of President Xi of China. I think President Xi is an authoritarian leader. And let me tell Mr. Putin, who interfered in the 2016 election, try to bring Americans against Americans. Hey, Mr. Putin, if I'm president of the United States, trust me, you're not going to interfere in any more American elections.
You seem like you enjoyed that.
Well, look, you got a situation where what the Russians did in 2016 is very, very serious stuff. We pride ourselves. What are we as a nation? If we don't have democracy, if we don't have the right to cast ballots that are secure, if we're not living in a free country. And Putin, not only in the United States, by the way, but all over Western Europe, is trying to disrupt democracy. He's an autocrat. He doesn't believe in democracy. He's trying to divide our people up in very, very ugly ways. That is an enormously serious attack against the American people. As President of the United States, that will end. Russia will not interfere in our elections.
The overall tone of what you say were attacks on you were not just about you because they want to be the front runner, not you. It was about you as an existential threat to the Democrats and the notion of trying to beat Donald Trump. And I'm just wondering how you combat that, not only on the presidential level, but also down ballot. I mean, I know I've heard from lots of Democrats who are focused on and even themselves trying to win again in suburbs who are freaking out.
Well, Dana, look, let's be clear. The establishment is freaking out. The corporate media, to a larger degree, is freaking out. As you're aware, some really horrific things have been said about me on at least one television channel. The establishment is worried. Wall Street is worried. The drug companies are worried. The insurance companies are worried. The fossil fuel industry is worried. And you know what? They should be worried. But here is the point. In the last 50 polls that have been done nationally, guess what? Bernie Sanders beat Donald Trump 47 times out of 50. I will beat Trump. In battleground states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, just look at the polling this last weekend. I beat Trump. The way you beat Trump, in my view, is to have the largest voter turnout in the history of this country. And if you run a campaign in the same old way that we have run it in the past, if there's not energy and excitement, if you're not getting working class people to get involved in the political process, if you're not bringing millions of young people into the political process, and we are doing that, I think Trump is going to win.
And just to be even more specific, Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House because the Democrats won the suburbs.
Right.
And there is a lot of concern that Bernie Sanders at the top of the Democratic ticket means bye-bye to the suburbs. It's not about the corporate, structure or so forth. It's about the demographics of the suburbs.
No, I think, again, we might want to listen to the people. And the people voted for me in Iowa, New Hampshire, and in Nevada. And I think we're going to do very well in the coming elections. I think too often we have leadership that is isolated from where real people are. And if we're going to beat Trump, we need a powerful message that says, you know what? We need an economy and a government that works for everybody, not just the 1%. We don't talk about this on corporate media very often. We don't talk about it in the Congress very often. But there is something wrong when after 45 years of an increase in productivity and technology, the average American worker is not making a nickel more than he or she did 45 years ago. When in the last 3 years, the billionaires of this country have seen an $800 billion increase in their wealth, while last year the average American worker saw a 1% increase in his or her income. We need fundamental changes. We need a government that works for all, not just the Michael Bloombergs of the world or wealthy campaign contributors.
So, Marco Rubio's campaign manager wrote an op-ed the other day, and it was interesting. It started off describing a fiery septuagenarian who calls out the corporate media, who comes in second in Iowa, first in New Hampshire.
I know where you're going on that.
Okay. Is there something that you share? When you talk about the polls or you talk about the corporate media, that you're tapping into the same things that he tapped into successfully?
Look, I have spent my whole life doing the best that I could fighting for justice. When I was a kid, I think I was 21 years of age, I was arrested in the city of Chicago opposing segregated housing, was involved in the civil rights movement. When I became a member of the Senate, I went to Immokalee, Florida to stand with undocumented workers who were getting ruthlessly exploited, and we had some impact on that. That's what I've done. I've been on more picket lines probably than everybody on that stage. Come on, that is what I do. That is what my life is about. And I think at the end of the day, people in this country will understand that Donald Trump is a fraud. He told the working people of this country in 2016 that he would provide health care to everybody. You covered that, right? That's what he said. And he tried to throw 32 million people off the health insurance that they have. He said his tax bill would not benefit the rich. 83% of the benefits of that bill went to the top 1% over a 10-year period. He said he wouldn't cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. That is what his budget has done. He is a fraud. And if I'm the Democratic nominee, I will expose him for the fraud he is. He is not a friend of working people. He represents his own class, which is the billionaire class.
So when Amy Klobuchar says, and she was just on with us a few moments ago, she talks about her math, which she laid out there, right, that she was critical of you, saying that your projected costs for what you're suggesting are 3 times greater than the size of the entire U.S. economy right now.
Look, right now, the average American, just in terms of health care, the average American worker, that family is making about $60,000 a year. That family right now is paying $12,000 a year for health care. Does anyone think that that's fair, that that's right? 20% of people's income are now going to health care. Under my proposal, that would go substantially down. A study just came out from Yale showing that Medicare for All will save $450 billion a year and save 68,000 lives because people will finally be able to go to the doctor before they have a terminal illness. Every study done shows that Medicare for all will save money, and that is what we have got to do.
Can I just ask you about that? Because you've served in the Congress for a long time, and I've watched you. You understand the realities as much as you are passionate about what you want to do. You understand what you can and cannot do. Do you actually think if you become president, you can get that passed?
Yes, I do.
Even if there's a supermajority of Democrats?
I'm going to be. I mean, our campaign is a different type of campaign. Our campaign is not vote for me, I'm a great guy. Our campaign is a multiracial, multi-generational movement of working people, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, coming together in the fight for justice. I've said it before, I say it again. If elected president, I will not just be commander-in-chief of the military, I will be that. I will be organizer-in-chief. I will be going all over the country to put pressure on senators like those from Kentucky, for example. Go to the people in Kentucky who are really hard-pressed, they're hurting right now, and say, really? Do you think we should raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? You tell your senators to do that. Should we make public colleges and universities tuition-free? You tell your senators to do that. I think I will be a very different type of president, rallying the American people around an agenda that they support and telling Congress that they've got to represent ordinary Americans, not just their wealthy campaign contributors. That is the problem with American politics today. Congress represents wealthy campaign contributors, ignores the needs of the middle class and working families.
Senator, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break. We're expecting Senator Elizabeth Warren right here next. We're covering debate night in South Carolina. Stay with us.
We made USAA insurance for veterans like Kate. When she got a new car for bigger projects, she quickly updated her policy on the USAA app and said, done. USAA, what you're made of, we're made for.
Hey, we're coming up on the top of the hour, Democratic debate night in South Carolina. For some of the candidates tonight, raw political combat. For others, a chance to try to make the case that just such warfare, as tempting as it might be in a primary race, could be fatal in a general election campaign. However the candidates chose to conduct themselves tonight, this was a significant moment, the last debate before Super Tuesday, full of issues voters care about at a time when the stakes are only growing. We're going to bring you all the key moments tonight. We'll be talking to more candidates shortly. Senator Elizabeth Warren is going to be coming up shortly. We're joined right now by the best political team around, Nima Malika Henderson, David Axelrod, Gloria Borger, Van Jones, former candidate Andrew Yang, Jess McIntosh, and CNN political commentator Abdul Al-Sayed, who we should mention has endorsed Bernie Sanders. We've heard from a couple of candidates so far. Pete Buttigieg seems to feel pleased about what he was able to do on the stage tonight. Let's talk a little bit more about Biden and where you see his performance tonight. I mean, he definitely...
Look, the bar is low for Biden. Let's just admit that the bar for him is low. But listen, he didn't do anything tonight that would break his momentum in South Carolina. It's very clear that Bernie is gaining on him in South Carolina. But he did stuff that reminded you of why you care about this guy. He's been on the American scene for a long time. He gets shouty. That doesn't work as well.
Shouty?
Shouty.
That's a new word.
He gets shouty.
Okay. The first finger also starts to come out.
Exactly.
He's...
Yeah, so that part. Listen, Pete Buttigieg is very interesting to me because he continues to make this case about Congress. It's not just about me. I don't just care about myself. I care about the Congress. I care about the Senate. I care about the House, where there are a bunch of superdelegates, by the way, who are sitting in the wings, and on the second vote, if nobody has a majority on the first vote, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, but Van, but the reality is that that is a conversation a lot of Democrats are having because they're concerned about Bernie Sanders in the suburbs, where Democrats picked up 36 seats or so in the last election, and whether he at the top of the ticket would jeopardize those House seats. That is one of the arguments you hear against his candidacy among people within the party.
It's an argument that people are making across the board. I think it's also just convenient that Pete, the only way Pete is going to be the nominee is if there's a brokered convention and people turn to him. And so
I think the only way Pete's going to be the nominee is if he can persuade some African Americans to vote for him. I thought he had a great debate tonight. I really thought he was the best on that stage. But the question is, did he move the needle at all? He's polling 4% among African Americans in South Carolina. Do you think that he moved the needle at all with those voters? And if not, to what avail was it?
So 2 points. Pete's extremely smart, and that's clear. At points, you feel like he gets bored of his own message. He really wants to be a pundit and to describe what's happening rather than to actually talk about what matters for people. And I don't know that that's going to play very well over the long term. Also, for somebody who admires Congress so much, you'd think he might run for Congress, which seems like a logical thing to do if you were a mayor of a small city.
And you're 38 years old.
And you're 38 years old. But to step back for a second, we did talk about Bloomberg a bit, and we did say that he wasn't the butt of all jokes, and he tried to even make a couple of jokes. You wonder if this is the best he can do. You ask yourself why he's still in this race. It's clear if you've been surrounded by people who laugh at your jokes because they're paid to do it.
Well, he has $60 billion. I mean, that's why he's still in the race. He is running these ads. I was in Illinois a couple of days ago, and he has this very powerful ad talking about criminal justice reform. And there's a criminal justice advocate who is talking about how great Michael Bloomberg is. So that's why he's still in this race. He's also in this race because there are, I think, a certain segment of Democratic voters who think you need a rich white man to take on a rich white man. And you can see that in the polls. He's at, I think, about 15%. He's got some traction in some of these Super Tuesday states as well, and with African-American voters. Mayor Steve Benjamin in South Carolina has endorsed him. Mayor Nutter, a bunch of black mayors from across the country. I thought he had a terrible debate early on. It got a little better when he started talking about some of the things he actually did in New York with obesity and other issues. But listen, I think if you are worried about a Bloomberg candidacy, you have Warren to thank tonight, because she keeps going after him in a way that I think is going to do her some good.
That recitation of Republicans that he had supported was just such a strong moment, and it wound up, and then she went back to the NDAs, and it wound up with almost another "nevertheless she persisted" moment where he says enough is never enough for you, and I think that was probably something that resonated with some women.
Let's play actually what she said about his support for Republican candidates.
Mayor Bloomberg, let's think of it this way. We're here in Charleston, and you know who's going to be in Charleston later this week is Donald Trump. He's going to be here to raise money for his buddy, Senator Lindsey Graham. Who funded Lindsey Graham's campaign for re-election last time? It was Mayor Bloomberg. And that's not the only right-wing senator that Mayor Bloomberg has funded.
I have been training for this job since I stepped on the pile that was still smoldering on 9/11. I know what to do. I've shown I know how to run a country. I've run the city, which is almost the same size, as bigger than most countries in the world. I am not the least. I'm the one choice that makes some sense. I have the experience, I have the resources, and I have the record. And all of the sideshows that the senator wants to bring up have nothing to do with that.
I don't understand how you call things like that sideshows. It is your record. It is who you are and who you have been for the past 20 years. Now, some Democrats may say that's fine. We don't mind that he's been bipartisan. He's allowed to give his money to all kinds of causes, and he's done some great things. But it seems arrogant to say it doesn't matter, and what's in my ads matters. So you have to come out from behind the curtain. And I think we've seen him do that. And he hasn't been particularly impressive. Better today than last time. And I think at some point you have to get people to say, this is the person I am trusting to be commander-in-chief, and I have to kind of understand him a little bit more. And I don't just want to know what's in a glossy ad. Money gets you so far, but not the whole distance.
He's so disconnected from the challenges that real people face. I mean, I'm from Michigan, and one of the defining issues we've had to deal with is the Flint water crisis. This guy spent $3 million to re-elect our Republican governor, who then went on to poison Flint. And so you think about him thinking about these things as sideshows because he's so used to setting an agenda, to deciding what matters among the mountain of people who work for him, that actually, in this case, it's what matters to the American people. This man doesn't know what it's like to live on a minimum wage in America. He doesn't know what it's like to suffer without the health care that you need. He doesn't know what it's like to be worried about losing your job.
But couldn't you make that same? Well, look, couldn't you make that same argument about Donald Trump? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, but he's president.
And if we end up having a Donald Trump versus
but he was able to, nevertheless, he was able to win and might very well win again.
Here's the difference, though. Donald Trump has an understanding. He's a showman. He has an understanding of what gets to people. Mayor Bloomberg clearly is not. I mean, he tripped over himself.
But his argument would be, you know what? I'm not a great communicator. I'm not a great politician, and I've done a lot of stupid stuff. Like I've learned a lot in my time.
And if that's your argument,
that would have been a good thing to say tonight.
But I get it done. You know what? I can run this. I can run this country. I've run this huge city. I mean, I can get it done. I hear it's like the George H.W. Bush speech. I hear the voices of. I see the people.
You can't argue. You can't. It's not really right to say, because he is wealthy, because Franklin Roosevelt, who everybody reveres, was incredibly wealthy. I don't think that disqualifies you. And he has done things on issues like guns that are very material in your hometown of Detroit and in my hometown of Chicago, very, very significant. But you're running to be the Democratic nominee, and the reason that Elizabeth Warren piece was so devastating was, you're funding people who are anathema to Lindsey Graham is anathema to Democrats, and it's hard for people to understand how you could be the leader of this team when you were funding that.
David,
and that's been his problem.
Push back on the point, though, right? The problem with him is not that he's rich. It's not even that he's a billionaire. It's that he fundamentally lacks the empathy to appreciate how his policies in New York hurt people. He had the opportunity again to apologize for stop and frisk. And his apology was more like, why do you guys keep asking me? I've already said I'm sorry. And I lived in New York during stop and frisk. I know what it's like to be stopped and frisked as a brown man. This disrespect for people and lack of empathy, that's the problem. That's what we can't have in a president.
And I think people expected him to get closer to showing some empathy on stop and frisk this go around. He was just as terrible in this debate in terms of his answer being very dismissive, essentially saying, "Oh, this was a sideshow too."
And lying.
Well, you know, let's play what he said, and we keep talking about it.
We let it get out of control, and when I realized that, I cut it back by 95%. And I've apologized and asked for forgiveness. I've met with black leaders to try to get an understanding of how I can better position myself and what I should have done and what I should do next time. But let me tell you, I have been working very hard. We've improved the school system for black and brown students in New York City. We've increased the jobs that are available to them. We've increased the housing that's available to them.
But what more
we have
can
programs
you do about
like
this issue, Mr. Mayor, to put people's fears and skepticism to rest?
I think
it continues to follow you.
No, well, that's because it's in their interest to promote that. But if you talk to the people in New York City, I have over 100 black elected officials that have endorsed me. A lot of them are in the audience tonight. And I've earned the respect of people in New York City. I was the mayor of the largest, most populous city in the United States for 12 years, and people will tell you it's a lot better city today. It is safer for everybody. The school system is better. The budget's under control. We've done the things that people need in New York City for all ethnicities.
Can I just say white candidates have to stop doing this "I have black friends" as an answer to something racist that has happened that they have done in their past, that they've said or done? And he keeps saying, "when I realized stop and frisk had gone too far," as if there was not a court order to stop it because he had been sued and he fought it and they won.
And he was backing it up as late as 2018.
Until he ran for president, he was backing
the realization was a week before or something that he announced for president, and he doesn't feel very convincing when he offers his apology. Mike Bloomberg thinks that he is the most qualified person to be president based on what he's done. He approaches this as a job interview, and this other stuff he does not think is particularly relevant.
Bloomberg's case for the nomination is essentially the opposite of Pete Buttigieg's, and let me explain. So this election, this primary is going to happen on Saturday, and then Super Tuesday is literally 3 days later. Pete's campaign does not have the financial resources to advertise in the Super Tuesday states at a competitive level. That's why they put out this plea for donations very recently, because they need that ad money. They need to cut those ads and then put them in those markets as quickly as possible. And 3 days is not enough time really to do it, even if he has a good result in South Carolina, which none of us really expects. Bloomberg's argument is essentially the opposite. Is like, I've got infinite bankroll to fund ads in Super Tuesday and throughout the entire primaries and against Donald Trump. Whatever the Republicans marshal as resources, I can outspend. The big missing piece to me is why Bloomberg would not just take all of these resources and put them towards a candidate that he believed in. It reminds me of like a movie director who casts himself. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't find anyone who's going to be better in this role than me. And like, you know, I looked in the mirror and I said, so that's like a very big question in my mind. But the argument he has is going to stick with us this entire primary season as long as he stays in the race. I thought today was a much better debate for Mike. And I actually have to say the improvement from less than a week ago to today was significant. Like, he went from being, you know, looking like he didn't belong to at least seeming like he fit in.
We got to take a quick break. We're going to hear from Senator Elizabeth Warren right when we come back, as well as other candidates. More on the impact of what they said when our coverage continues. back. Debate night in South Carolina. I want to go straight to Aaron Burnett and Dana Bash and Senator Elizabeth Warren. Dana, Aaron?
All right. Thank you, Anderson. And we are here with Senator Warren. So how did you feel tonight in that free-for-all? How did you feel you fared?
Look, it was a free-for-all, but I feel good. I got to talk about the things I wanted to talk about, including why I think I'm the best candidate for president. So that's got to be a good night.
And you did, some of your fire had not been trained until at one point tonight at Bernie Sanders. But you did directly say tonight that you think you will make a better president than Bernie Sanders.
I do.
And do you think you made that case? He obviously came in tonight as a very strong front runner.
Look, the way I see it is we learned two things that we talked about tonight. The first one is that we've just got to understand the Democratic Party is a progressive party, and progressive ideas are popular. They're popular among Democrats, they're popular among independents, they're popular among Republicans. My 2-cent wealth tax, popular among Democrats and Republicans. Raising Social Security by $200 a month, popular among Democrats and Republicans. So there is a real progressive sense of what we can do. We get this moment. This is not a moment for any of the people on this stage who want to kind of nibble around the edges of problems. I think that this is a progressive moment, but we're only going to get one chance at this, and that means we need a president who has a track record for getting things done, for digging in, for doing the hard work, for building the coalitions, and for actually getting things done.
Several of your fellow Democrats, your competitors, made very clear in no uncertain terms that they believe that Bernie Sanders as the Democratic nominee will be a disaster for Democrats, that he can't win because of his progressive policies, some of the ones that you were talking about. Do you subscribe to that? Do you think Bernie Sanders can beat Donald Trump?
Look, I think that the most dangerous candidate on that stage for Democrats is Michael Bloomberg, because right now, Michael Bloomberg has dumped, $400 million into buying his way onto that debate stage. And yet look at all the things that are not yet exposed about Michael Bloomberg. How much support he has given to Republicans, which raises a real question. So, okay, he beats Donald Trump, and then who is he really? Is he a Democrat or is he a Republican? His history with women, his attacking African Americans and Latinos, blaming them, blaming redlining, blaming them for the housing crash in 2008. This is not a man who's going to be able to garner the support of all of the Democrats, and that would be a real problem for us going into 2020.
Let me ask
to
you,
the general election.
Let me ask you just a quick follow. You were not asked about this. Nobody was, including the former mayor. His longtime partner, Diana Taylor, said last night on the question of the NDAs and so forth, it was 30 years ago, get over it. But just to be fair to her, the context of that was that she worked on Wall Street. She understands that the culture was very, very different back then, that it was a bro culture.
Look, if you want to make the argument it was a different culture, fine, make that argument. But release the women to be able to talk. This notion that there are, I don't know how many women, and maybe men, who claim that they have been harassed or discriminated against, and they are not able to tell their stories without fear of being sued by a billionaire. No, that just doesn't cut it. So, not in the Democratic Party, not in 2020.
So I want to understand exactly what you're saying on that, because obviously he said he will release the women from the NDAs, which applied to him specifically, which he says are 3. So do you say that he's lying, or do you think that he should release people from NDAs that had nothing to do with it?
Let me be really clear here. If there are only 3, and he's right on that, he could sign a general release because it would apply to only 3 people, right? So why won't he sign a general release? And also, I think it's very important. This is about the mayor himself and the mayor's company that he runs. So not all of this is from 30 years ago. We don't know how much there is and what the time is, but I do know this. Women have had enough of being told, no, 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 it was a different time, didn't know how to take a joke. What was it the mayor said tonight? Enough is enough? No, when we're talking about pregnancy discrimination, which goes on today, enough is not enough.
He denied that happened.
He denied it, but where is she? That's the whole point.
So when
women should have a chance. I get to tell my story without fear of being sued by a billionaire. Yeah. Other women should be able to do the same.
So he said that Bloomberg will no longer have NDAs, which he credited you
forward.
with. Right,
Good.
but he credited you with that.
Great.
That would be that makes a difference.
Fab.
He pointed out when you made the point about pregnancy discrimination that with what he did in New York, that would be against the law to do to any teacher. Does any of that add up to anything to you?
Of course it does, and I'm very, very happy to see it, but it does not change the fact that today there are women who claim to have been discriminated against or sexually harassed who are not legally able to speak without running a risk that they will be sued by a billionaire. And a lot of folks can't take that kind of risk. So all I'm saying is, we talk a lot in the Me Too era about the importance of believing women. How about just starting out by letting them speak? That's what the mayor should do.
And you're saying that releasing 3 is not enough?
He picked the 3.
So you want them all released?
Yeah.
I mean, and as a lawyer, I mean, I'm just saying that would be all right for him to do, even if the 2 complainants did not involve himself?
Look,
some other man who worked at Bloomberg and a woman who worked at Bloomberg.
He tried last week to take credit. He said, no, my company won all of these terrific awards, and therefore that reflects on me. Well, you got to take the up with the down in that argument. He's the one who opened that door. Once you've opened that door, then it's absolutely clear. You got to take whatever's out there for the companies that you run. This is about taking responsibility. And look, it really is about who we can trust to be our nominee on the Democratic side going into a general election.
On that note, let's just look ahead. We have the primary here on Saturday.
Yep.
Then Super Tuesday.
Yep.
Including your home state of Massachusetts.
Yep.
Where do you see yourself winning in order to keep your campaign going?
I just see this as every day I get out here and have a chance to talk about progressive values and to talk about the importance of getting things done, like the consumer agency that I fought for and that has now returned $12 billion directly to people. That's how I make change. And I'm just delighted. I'm honored to be in this fight. Look,
will you win Massachusetts?
I'll tell you this. When I got in the race back in 2012, remember, I haven't been in politics that long. It's the first race I ever got in. When I got in 2012, it was because people were saying Scott Brown, the Republican, is simply unbeatable. And they also said a woman can't beat him. For which I say Democrats get a better sales pitch. But I got in that race. I was down 17 points. And the good people of Massachusetts basically said to me, you take the point and we'll come and help you. People volunteered. People made it happen. And I ended up beating him by 7.5 points. I'm deeply grateful to the people of Massachusetts, and I've tried really hard to hold faith with all the trust that they put in me.
Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
It's always good to be here. And look, anybody who thinks this is the right way to run a presidential, I hope they go to ElizabethWarren.com. After the last debate, we had 250,000 people come to our website and say, I'm in this fight for a whole lot of different reasons, but ultimately because I believe in the America we can build together.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Senator.
good to see you.
Thank you. You too. And we're going to take a quick break, back with more candidates and more analysis in New York with Anderson and the team. This is a special 360 debate night coverage. Stay with us.
Difficult and chaotic were two words that Jess McIntosh used earlier tonight to describe tonight's Democratic debate. Andrew Yang talked about the fact that for some of the candidates, this could be their last chance to try to stand out. Gloria Borcher compared Bernie Sanders to a rhetorical and political bulldozer. Listen to this from Joe Biden talking about his record on gun control in the African-American community.
You know, we talk about progressive. Let's talk about being progressive. Walking distance here is Mother Emanuel Church. 9 people shot dead by a white supremacist. Bernie voted 5 times against the Brady bill and wanted a waiting period. No, let me finish. And waited a waiting period of 12 hours. I'm not saying he's responsible for the 9 deaths, but that man would not have been able to get that weapon with the waiting period had been what I suggest until you are cleared.
Back now with the team. He brings this up quite a lot as an attack on Sanders and others. I mean, it's been brought up a number of times during debates in the past, but he's sort of the only one kind of still pushing on this. Does it work?
We don't know, but I think look, it's an open door for him. He feels it's a real opportunity. I'm surprised did Bloomberg chime in on that? I think he might have eventually.
My guess is Bloomberg's going to chime in with about $100 million of ads very soon.
But I think it's no surprise that Biden would go on the attack this way on Sanders, and I think that there are lots of other issues that Biden can attack him on, but this is just so obvious for him. Whether it helps him in South Carolina, it might help him nationally with Democrats, certainly to divide Bernie Sanders from what he considers to be the mainstream of the Democratic Party, which he believes that he represents. And Sanders then comes out and says, look, that was a long time ago and I've changed my mind and supported the assault weapons ban. I lost a race for Congress because I supported the assault weapons ban, which is true. So Bernie has a good answer on that, which is to say, I'm different now from the way I was then, which a lot of politicians up there on that stage, most notably Michael Bloomberg, just can't bring themselves.
Although he lost the race for Congress, he lost the race for Congress before he took the pro-NRA position. So the sequence is not convenient.
Right, you're right. You're absolutely right. But at least he did say that. On other issues like Cuba and Nicaragua, he can't say I made a mistake, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, this could help him in South Carolina. He obviously wrapped it in this very painful episode of the folks in that Charleston church, Mother Emanuel being shot dead. Charleston's going to be an important place to get out the African-American vote, so you can see him doing that there with this issue that's very important to African-Americans. You also saw him do the same thing with Tom Steyer on for-profit prisons. That's when they got into that big shouting match. You could barely hear what they were saying. It was a sort of a Tom Steyer I'd never seen before, yelling on stage because Steyer
never been attacked.
Yeah, Steyer is doing well with African Americans in South Carolina. He's been, he's been on air down there really since the impeachment ads that he's been running for years and years, and so you could tell where Biden sees some of the vulnerabilities he has with African Americans.
Let's play that exchange there.
I bought stock in a prison company thinking they'd do a better job, and I investigated and I sold it.
Okay.
You knew when you bought it they'd done that. I get to answer this question. And in fact, since then, I've worked to end the use of private prisons in my home state, and we've ended it. I've started a bank to support black ownership of businesses, women ownership of businesses, and Latino owners of businesses, because this financial service industry is prejudiced. I have worked tirelessly on this, and you know I'm right. You wrote the crime bill.
Where we come from, that's called Tommy Come Lately.
So, look, I know Tom very well. He took that personally. That wasn't play acting. That wasn't something his team, hey, find a moment or whatever. Some stuff going on up there was that. Tom really believes in racial justice. I mean, he does. And I think for him to get I think Tom feels very badly about the fact that he did invest in private prisons, and I think now private prisons are in terrible odor. He got out of private prisons before they got in terrible odor. But that was an authentic response. And I think, for a Biden to go after a Tom shows you the fear Biden has, that this guy is clawing into my black firewall. Oh, totally. That it's not just Bernie, it's that you've got Tom Steyer in there, as you say, running ad after ad after ad and building black support at Biden's expense.
Tom Steyer is actually standing by with Aaron and Danish. Let's go to them.
Thanks so much, and we have Tom Steyer here. You were watching that clip. I won't say it. You'll say what your reaction was watching it after the fact.
Well, racial justice is something I care an amazing amount. And, my family's been involved in it for decades. And so I take it really seriously. And I was pushing back hard because
you were mad.
I care a lot about it, and I've worked on it for years. And I thought that for someone who wrote the crime bill that put hundreds of thousands of black young men and Latino young men in prison in a way that's never happened before was really unfair. Because this is something, if you look at my history, this is something I've worked on. I was telling the truth. I've worked on this tirelessly. My whole family has. We've started a bank literally to push back against racial prejudice in the financial services industry. And we've done that for 15 years, not because I was running for president, because it's the right thing to do and I care about it.
The fact that the former vice president had his opposition research ready to go, he wanted to hit you on the private prison issue. It's obvious if you look at the polls why that is. His campaign, people around him and people who are supporting him think that if his support has gone down here in South Carolina, particularly among African Americans, because you've taken it away. Do you
look? Honestly, I've been hearing that, and that also gets me a little upset. And I'll tell you why.
Don't you want to do well?
No, I do want to do well, but there's an implication in there that somehow a politician owns black votes, has a right to black votes, and I don't believe that for a second. I think that the truth of the matter is that which I've said publicly, the African American community has been the moral leadership of this country. And the idea that somehow losing those votes is losing something that you own, I just completely reject that idea.
So when he said you're a Tommy come lately, which we heard there in the clip, but he then said again.
I don't even know what that
made you mad? I mean,
no, I don't.
You're just jumping into it. He's trying to say, I've spent my decades and decades doing this, and here you're coming in, sailing in, thinking you can take away from me.
I have no idea even what that means. I find that humorous.
So, again, Joe Biden's focus on you, though, does it surprise you? And when you say that a politician owns it, at the end of the debate, you were asked about what you think people don't get about you, and you said that I'm all about business excess and money.
And the truth of the matter is what I'm really about is what I said, doing the right thing and telling the truth. And that's exactly what I try and do all the time. So I take that really seriously. People always ask me, why do you care about this stuff? The answer is, no, this is who I am. This is what I care about. I'm not caring about this in order to get something. This is what I care about. This is where my heart is. This is what gets me up in the morning, and I've been doing it for a long time, and this is what I'm interested in, and this is my motivation in life. My motivation in life is not to win an election. My motivation in life is to tell the truth and do the right thing, and that's what I'm trying. So if someone comes after me at that, I'm upset.
You outspent your rivals by a lot in Nevada on TV. You think you spent like $12 or $13 million, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and you didn't get a lot for it when it comes to votes or delegate caucus support. It could be different here, but obviously your goal is to be the Democratic nominee, but you also are a businessman who knows math. So what are you thinking as you go into Saturday, but then more broadly about how much money you are willing to spend to keep going?
Look, if I can't show that I'm the person who can pull together this broad Democratic coalition across racial and philosophical backgrounds, then that's what I intend to show on Saturday. That's what I think is important. What I was trying to say today is, look, to beat Donald Trump in November. That means we have to pull together the Democratic Party. There are a lot more of us than there are of them, but there aren't a lot more of us if we don't all show up.
How do you quantify showing?
Turnout.
But I mean, did you have in your mind a percentage?
No,
of the vote,
I think we'll look at it and see. But that's going to be the point. Look, and I'm serious about this. What I was trying to say tonight is having the press wants to think that there are really two candidates left in this race. A socialist who wants the government to take over large parts of the economy, and a former Republican mayor who's had a lot of policies that don't actually accord with Democratic values. Things like, stop and frisk and redlining. And who's actually supported, I think Elizabeth Warren brought up, that he supported a lot of Republicans, including George W. Bush. And so the question is, if we're going to try and pull this party together, is that risky, or shouldn't we follow somebody who's a progressive Democrat and can pull the party together across all the divisions? And what I'm arguing is that's what we should be doing in order to beat Donald Trump, that we need someone who can, look, Trump is incompetent. We're seeing this in coronavirus, but we're seeing it in his handling of the economy too. He is incompetent, and we need someone who can talk about competence and job creation and putting money in people's pockets and letting it stay there in a way that hasn't happened in 40 years. That's what Americans need to hear. Why are we better than Donald Trump in terms of their prospects in life?
All right. Thank you very much, Tom Steyer. Appreciate your time tonight.
Nice to see you both.
And we have to get a break in. And just ahead, we'll hear from a group of South Carolina voters and get their thoughts on what they saw tonight in that fracas. We never get to use that word, fracas. We'll be right back.
We don't use it enough.
We made USAA insurance for busy veterans like Kate. So when her car got hit, she didn't waste any time. She filed the claim on her USAA app and said, that was easy. USAA, what you're made of, we're made for.
Well, beyond anything the candidate or the experts have to say about the debate, what matters most tonight is what primary voters make of what they saw. With that in mind, let's check in with Gary Tuckman in Allendale, South Carolina, near the Georgia border. Gary?
Anderson, there are 46 counties in the state of South Carolina, and we are here in Allendale County, 90 miles west of where the debate was in Charleston, watching the debate with some loyal Democratic voters here in what may be the bluest county in this red state. 2016, we got 76% of the vote here. Donald Trump, 22%, under the highest percentage in the states. We wanted to come here, watch it with these loyal Democrats. 11 of these 12 people were undecided going into this evening. The one woman sitting in the middle in the front row, Wilda Robinson, the only one who voted absentee early for Joe Biden. But now, we want to see of the 12 of you, who you thought did the best tonight. Who do you think did the best?
I thought Mike Bloomberg did the best.
Mike Bloomberg.
I felt Vice President Biden did the best.
Vice President Biden.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Biden.
Mike Bloomberg. Vice President Biden.
Biden.
Warren.
Warren.
Mayor Pete. Biden.
How many said Biden? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many said Warren? 2. How many said Bloomberg? Buttigieg? And those were only votes. So Joe Biden did the best among this group. 11 of you were undecided who you're going to vote for. How many have now, based on this debate, decided who they're going to vote for? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 of you have now made your decision. Who have you decided you're going to vote for?
Vice President Biden.
Biden.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg.
Biden.
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 Biden. Anyone else? The rest of you remain undecided. You already voted for Biden.
Already voted.
So this is good news for Joe Biden. Why do you think Joe Biden did so well?
Showed character, integrity, and leadership skills. He has the ability to be able to interact with national leaders, international leaders. He's been there. He's done that.
Okay, now, Bernie Sanders, the front runner, most delegates so far. None of you picked Bernie Sanders tonight. Why did you like Bernie Sanders tonight?
I didn't like how he opened in the debate by throwing slams at Bloomberg, and it just started out on a bad course for the rest of the debate.
You think there was too much animosity?
Yeah, a lot of hostility, and it just wasn't very pleasant to watch most of the debate.
Now, most of you told me before that you think Bloomberg did a better job this time around. You think Bloomberg did the best job. Tell me why.
Well, compared to what his actions last week, he did a much better job.
How do you think he handled the stop and frisk?
I think he cleaned that up. I think the way that he spoke about it and he owned up to it, I think he put himself in a better position.
Do you trust him?
I do.
You do, so you believe in what he says?
Yes.
Does anyone still have doubts about Mike Bloomberg?
Oh, I do.
Why do you have doubts about him?
I didn't think he cleared it up. I think he said what he wanted the Americans to know, or wanted the Americans to feel or hear from him, but I don't think he was honest with that.
Why do you think he wasn't honest, though? How could you tell me?
I think his facial expressions.
Just based on his face?
His face.
Now, let me ask you this question. Most of you like Joe Biden the best right now. Do you think Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that?
I just think he has the experience.
Yeah.
Is there any concerns, though, about his performances in the past?
I don't think so. No. I think he's the man that's got the plan.
And the final question I want to ask you, would you vote for any of these Democratic candidates over Donald Trump?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
These are loyal Democrats, as I said, and they will be going to the polls. There's no early voting in South Carolina except for the absentee ballot, which is...
Well, it's early.
That's early.
Still early.
But these people will all be going to the polls on Saturday. Back to you.
Gary, thanks very much, and please give our thanks to all of them for that. Thanks very much. Our panel's reaction to what everyone said next. We'll be right back.